But, I sort of changed my whole mental perspective and said, I'm so lucky that I get to race. Forget about poor me, that I have a chest infection and I'm not going to win the Ironman because I'm sick. My perspective is, how lucky am I that I have CF and I get to race, and I'm not going to flounder this opportunity to get to race the best women in the entire world. I am so lucky. And so I'm going to take all of myself, which is someone with CF and someone with a chest infection. I'm going to be the best person on that start line with CF and with a chest infection, and I'm going to have a great day.
That was Lisa Bentley, 11-time Ironman champion and third place finisher in Kona 2006, and now one of the team captains for the Collins Cup. And you're listening to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors PrecisionHydration.com. You can personalize your hydration strategy today with electrolytes in different strengths that match how you sweat. And you can get 15% off your first order with the code OxygenAddict15. And we're also brought to you by Thriver.co. Take health tracking to a new level with your personalized at-home finger prick blood test. You can use the code OxygenAddict10 for 10% off all subscriptions. All right, everybody, hello and welcome to the show. I hope you're all doing well. I am pleased to report that I'm feeling back to full strength, and I've had a really pretty good week actually since last week. It's been on an upward trend the whole time, and I've held myself back from training all the way through until yesterday, when I managed to get out for my first run in over 2 weeks, if you can believe that. Just a very gentle 30-minute jog, but I was certainly glad to be out running in the sunshine again. Not very fast, I have to say. There was lots of walk breaks in there, and the old lungs don't feel right yet. Still, I've got to say they're not 100% there. A lot better than they were, but I've had this very funny sensation of almost like being at university and having smoked too many cigarettes the night before. Really sort of wheezy lungs, almost like there's sand or fine powder in them or something. So that's almost completely gone, which is a good sign. I'm going to jump on Zwift later on tonight for the first time in 2 weeks as well. Have a proper ride on there with the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast Power Hour ride. I'm recording this Tuesday night, so I've got about an hour and a half before the ride happens as things stand at the moment. So if you want to join us on one of those future rides, it's 7:15 p.m. UK time on Zwift. Just searching the events for the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast Power Hour. You come and do some structured interval training with us, and there'll be a little bit more about that later on. Right, so we've had a few things happen since the last time we spoke. We've got a cracking interview lined up for you later on today. I think you'll already have heard. We've got Lisa Bentley on. She was 11-time Ironman champion. She won Ironman Australia 5 times, amongst many other races. And she's a super, super interesting story, not least because she has been a sufferer of cystic fibrosis for her whole life. And so she's had to overcome hideous problems with chest infections and being on antibiotics for 3 or 4 months of the year for pretty much her whole life. So she's got an amazing positive mental attitude towards this stuff. And she talks in the interview quite openly about how she thinks that she thought herself into a lot of the victories that she had. She mentally overcame all these challenges every day to the point where overcoming the physical discomfort of racing, I think, wasn't the big battle that you and I experience, or not quite the same thing anyway. So listen out for that. So news today brought to us by our sponsors at PrecisionHydration.com. Remember, you can get yourself 15% off your first order with the code OxygenAddict15. You're going to need to get yourself decked out with plenty of electrolytes for all this indoor training at the moment, especially as it's nice and warm at the moment here in the UK. So if you're on the treadmill, if you're on the turbo trainer, obviously, my first tip is get yourself a fan to blow over you. But even with that, I'm finding that I'm going through more than one 750 milliliter bottle of fluid in an hour's training on the turbo, especially if there's any kind of intense work on there. So I really need to keep on top of my electrolytes, and you do as well. It's super important for me because I'm a really salty sweater, and I get hideous cramps in the night if I've trained and I've either not drunk enough or if I've not drunk electrolytes as I've been training. And I think a lot of people from the comments I've been getting over social media and emails are experiencing the same thing, that as you're doing more training indoors, it's got to be part of your routine, hasn't it, to fill your bottle to get on the turbo trainer. And I think often people forget to do that. Make it part of your routine, like putting on your bib shorts is, and get yourself some electrolytes from Precision Hydration in there as well. I don't think there's any problem going more electrolytes than you might need. So I go with a 1500 milligrams sachets. It's really strong. You get plenty of sodium back into your body after an indoor workout, and there's no danger to you from that. So err on the side there of having a bit more rather than a bit less. But you can also take their online sweat test on their website if you haven't done it before. That'll give you a really good lead as to which of their 3 strengths of electrolytes would be suitable for you. So get over there and check it out, precisionhydration.com. Now, they've also got a special offer on at the moment for all of us. They've got a 1-hour course called The Science of Endurance Hydration as part of Training Peaks University, and it's usually $100 or $99. You can get it at the moment for $10 using the code UPSKILL. That's UPSKILL. And I got this note through from them. You should consider this course if you're a coach who wants to help athletes avoid common hydration mistakes during training and racing, athletes who frequently run into GI and cramping issues during activity, or who just want to improve their performance can benefit from this course too. By the end of the course, you'll be familiar with the complicated history of hydration science and have a good understanding of the science of hydration for endurance athletes. And you'll also have all the tools and know-how to build a personalized hydration strategy for training and for racing. So get over there and check it out. And they've also got a precision hydration jigsaw available at the moment. So get over to their website and check that out. If you're bored and you're stuck for something to do with the kids, what better to do than the precision hydration jigsaw, right? All right, so news then. First big news here in the UK. Ironman UK has been officially cancelled. Hats off to them for getting in well before the 50-day cutoff that Ironman officially said they were gonna let people know before. Personally, I've said this before, I think 50 days is a ridiculously short time period to be telling people that they're going to cancel an event, and they should give you 12 weeks notice of it, but they're not doing that at the moment in a lot of cases. Ironman UK, to give them credit, have got ahead of that curve and let everybody know as soon as. So the race is cancelled for this year. It's going to be moved forward onto the 4th of July for next year. We've also heard Ironman Mont Tremblant over in Canada has been cancelled as well. And we also saw notice that Ironman Cork, which we already knew had been cancelled from June of this year, has been moved to the middle of August for next year, which will make for a much more pleasant sea temperature for swimming. I can tell you from a lot of experience back in my days as a surfer and windsurfer that the sea is pretty chilly in June unless we've had a really warm early summer, and it's really quite pleasant in August. So I think that'll be a big bonus for them, and hopefully you'll see a period of more settled weather over there for that race as well. A couple of other things to flag up for you. You might have seen Geraint Thomas doing his 3 days of back-to-back 12-hour rides on Zwift to raise money for the NHS. Well, not to be outdone, we've got some triathletes who are trying to raise money for the NHS as well. And I'd encourage you to go over and give these guys your support and help them raise some money for the NHS. First up, I had a note from my old pal Joe Duckworth, who you'll remember, he was the winner of the Lakesman full distance race in 2017, and we had an interview with him on episode 146. Joe, get this, is going to be doing an indoor Deca Ironman starting on May the 1st. So every day for 10 days, he's going to do an indoor Ironman. He's replacing the swim with an hour's row. So he's not shirking his responsibility there. That's a solid start to your day in hours rowing. And he's then going to do 180 Ks on Zwift and then a marathon on his treadmill. So you can go over and give him some support. I checked in earlier today. He's already raised about 850 quid as I go to press now, which is a good effort, but he's aiming for 10 grand. So justgiving.com/fundraising/Joe Duckworth1. So yeah, get over there and check him out, and I'll be reporting back on that as he goes along. I think that's a pretty phenomenal effort. And also I got a little message over on Instagram from a young man called Cal Townsend. Now Cal's, from memory, he's in his early 20s, he's 21, 22, 23, something like that. He rode for 24 hours straight on Zwift. So he made a pretty cool little video of this over on his YouTube channel, which I watched. He rode, get this, over 700 kilometers in 24 hours. And he seems like a really nice kid. I was really impressed with the video that he made. And to give him his due, I mean, the thought of 24 hours on a turbo trainer, is enough to, give me saddle sores and make me cry. And he must have been moving some, because, that's over 400 miles, isn't it, in your 24 hours. So he's not hanging about there on Zwift. And he looked pretty fresh at the end of it as well, and managed to raise a bit of a sprint at the finish. So I was very impressed with him. You can check him out over on Instagram's at Cal Townsend Try on there. And you can follow the links. There's a link embedded in his bio to go and watch his videos. So nice work, Cal. Very impressed. Okay, guys, a bit of news over on Coach's Couch. So I wanted to check in with you all and see how you're all doing with your training. It's, what are we now, 6 weeks or so into lockdown. And it's at a point where either, I think two things seem to be happening from all the messages I'm seeing on our social media on Facebook. Either people are really knuckling down and getting into the rhythm and the groove of this, or they're completely losing the plot and they are either doing crazy long duration stuff and then nothing, or they've just decided to do nothing. They're sitting on the sofa watching Netflix and trying to get as many chocolate biscuits inside them as possible. So my plea to you today is, come on, guys, let's grab ourselves together. If you're some of these people who are, you're currently losing the will to live with the lockdown and the uncertainty, let's get a bit of structure into your life. Let's get a bit of structure back into your training. Let's get you up at the same time every morning, and let's get you either on the bike and into your running shoes and get you doing something. Now, my personal take from this, just over the last few days, like I said, I have only been running since yesterday. I've not biked yet. But since Friday, I thought what I can do is I can get started on that idea of the exercise snacks that Dr. Anton Crick talked about in his interview with us. And his idea was basically set your watch. In fact, we might hear a little beep later on. My beep is about to go off. Set your watch to beep every hour. And whatever you're doing, especially if you're working at home, this works really well, get down and just do a few exercises. So I started off doing 5 press-ups, 10 crunches. I've got a little set of dumbbells. And I did 5 bicep curls, 5 shoulder presses, and then went back to working again. And it was amazing how at the end of that, in fact, not even the end of the first day, halfway through that first day, I was starting to feel like an athlete again. Even though it was only 5 press-ups and 5 arm curls and stuff, I was starting to feel like I had that routine back in my life. And, having sat on the sofa and done nothing and felt rotten for 2 weeks, that was really good. And I've stuck with this, and I've just added on 1 press up and 1 curl every day. So I decided I was going to do this for 10 hours every day. So 5 press ups the first day got me 50 press ups done in a day. And I tell you what, I felt nothing the next day. No soreness, no DOMS, just cracked on. So the next day I did 6, the next day I did 7. I'm up to sets of 9 today. So today, by the end of it, I've got 2 more sets to do when I finish recording and a bit later on. I'm going to have done 90 press ups, 90 arm curls. I'm up to doing sets of 20 crunches, so that'll be 200 crunches, and it's easily maintainable throughout the day. So just giving me that little bit of structure has really given me the bit between my teeth. I've started to feel like an athletic human again, rather than a sick, ill, fat blob who's sitting on the sofa and eating too many chocolate biscuits. Okay, so give this a go. You don't necessarily have to start with 10 sets for every day. You could start with 3 sets of it and build up the sets every day, but just get in the habit of doing something. And I just love the fact that I'm doing something every hour. Just like Anton said, it's given me that structure back, and it means I don't find myself just sitting down at the computer for a stretch of 5 or 6 hours, which was pretty common before. So I think this is a habit that's going to stick with me for a long time, a long way beyond lockdown. So give that a go. And the other thing I was going to say was, if you are a self-coached athlete who hasn't got any coaching help at the moment and you want a bit of help with some structure, what we decided to do was open up our try a month of coaching with us for £1 plan. So you can come on board with Team Oxygen Addict. We'll give you your first month of training for £1. See how it feels, see how it works for you. There's no obligation to sign up at the end of it, although obviously I would love it if you did. But I think it's a good thing that we can do for you all who aren't being coached and who don't have a program to follow. You'll have 3 structured bike workouts a week. You'll have 3 structured run workouts a week. We've got structured swim cord workouts. We've got the exercise snacks. We've got strength and conditioning. We've got yoga in there with a video of yoga that you can watch. So It's an absolute no-brainer, I think, to get that for £1 for 30 days. You're in our Facebook group, getting encouragement from us. Our members are organising daily Zwift rides at the moment, so not just the organised Oxygen Addict Power Hour ride on Tuesdays at 7:15. There's a ride happening every time we've got a ride structure, so 3 or sometimes 4 times a week. We've got group meetups. We use this Discord app. Whether you've heard of that or not, I don't know, but it's like voice and text messaging when you're on your phone as you're riding along. So give each other a bit of banter and a bit of abuse as you're riding and have a chat and a catch up. It's really a really nice way to get your training done. And when your teammates say, look, the ride's happening at 12 o'clock today, it gives you something to aim for. It's almost like meeting your mates to go for a ride outside. So I encourage you, come and give it a go. See how you think, see how you feel. And at the end of it, if you like it, we'll discuss getting you in the team full time. But there's no obligation if you don't want to. Okay? So come and give it a try. The link is in the show notes. Or if not, just go to teamoxygenaddict.com and it's on there as well. And you get your first month for £1. So yeah, give that a go. Okay, this week's interview of the week. Before I do that, just a reminder, the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Power Hour on Zwift, Tuesdays, 7:15 p.m. UK time. There's a link to it out on Twitter and on Facebook, but if you just log into Zwift 10 minutes or so before the time, it'll appear in the list of events on the right. Okay, so just scroll through the events, find 7:15, Oxygen Addict Power Rides there, click it. You're there to join, and away you go. Just make sure you're on 5 or 10 minutes before the ride's due to start, okay? And we'll have a nice structured ride with some intervals in there. We've got some fun stuff coming up from next week with some of those micro intervals that Dr. Anton Creek talked about, so that's going to be awesome. Be part of it. Come and join us. Don't sit on your bums. Come and join us. It's going to be awesome. Right, this week's interview of the week is brought to us by our old sponsor friends, Thriver.co. Now, remember, Thriver do this really cool at-home blood testing service. They send you a little parcel out. It comes through your letterbox. It's got a little finger prick thing in that you prick your finger, you squeeze a few drops of blood out into a tiny little test tube, and you package it up. You put your name on the little test tube thing, you stick it in the post, and off it goes. 24 hours later, you've got the results of your blood tests back. Now, couldn't be easier. It takes less than 5 minutes from opening the box to having the envelope sealed up and ready to go. Okay. You can choose what you have done in terms of blood testing. So some of the different things you can choose from. First up, if you're looking for athletic type stuff, you can have your iron levels tested, your hematocrit, your testosterone, liver function, all the vitamins, but especially vitamin B9 and B12, vitamin D levels. Or if you're interested in health stuff, you can have your thyroid function checked. You can be checked for diabetes, cholesterol level, omega-3, omega-6, anything that you can be tested for bloods-wise, you can have it done through Thriver. It's absolutely no hassle because it gets done at home. You don't have to go to the doctors and deal with sitting in the doctor's surgery. Not that you could at the moment anyway, but believe you me, trying to get a blood test done at the GPs was a nightmare back in the day. So you can have all of this stuff done, and you can then check, for example, you might remember back in the day when I went onto a vegan diet, I ended up with incredibly low vitamin B12 levels, and the supplementation and the changes in diet that I implemented after that were fundamental in me coming back and starting to feel much, much healthier again. Basically, all the fault of me and my cooking, not the fault of the vegan diet, but I just wasn't feeding myself correctly. I just cut out all the meat and protein, and a lot of days just didn't replace it correctly. So nothing against the whole vegan thing, everything against my uselessness with cooking, essentially. So if you're not quite feeling right at the moment and you want to know what's going on with your health and with your blood, you can get it done over at Thriver.co. You can use the code OxygenAddict10 for 10% off all subscriptions. So even if you've already signed up with them, you can use this Oxygen Addict 10 number there for to get it off your subscriptions from now on, which is awesome. Okay, this week's interview of the week, I've already mentioned. She is a legend of triathlon, Lisa Bentley. 5 times winner of Ironman Australia, 3 times winner of Ironman Canada, 2 times of New Zealand, and a winner in Germany. And I think she was top 10 in Kona 6 or 7 times, including finishing on the podium in 3rd place. Great interview. Super inspiring. You will not meet a more positive person than Lisa Bentley. All right, here we go. Lisa Bentley, welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Great, thank you. Yeah, much better than when we had to postpone the interview from a couple of weeks ago,
Oh,
unfortunately.
thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah, back on good form. Whereabouts are you in the world at the moment? Where are you speaking from? Are you in Canada?
I'm in Canada. I'm just outside of Toronto in a little suburb north of Toronto called Caledon in
Okay,
Ontario.
nice. Okay, good stuff. Well, listen, I'm going to start by introducing you here. You are an 11, is this 11-time Ironman champion? Is that those numbers still correct?
Yes.
11-time champion, and you were a 5 times winner of Ironman Australia, 3 times of Ironman Canada, 2 in New Zealand, and a win at Germany, amongst others.
Yes. Yes.
Pretty good race stats to kick off the interview with.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. And I never took one single race or win for granted. And I can honestly say I enjoyed the entire journey, the wins, the non-wins, the whole opportunity to be able to race around the world and to race some great competition.
Well, one of the reasons for having you on is to talk about your career and hear about some of the amazing stories you've got. And we'll go into more of that in a minute. But also something that's almost meditated the interview is getting hooked up with the interview through the Pro Triathletes Union and your work that you're going to be doing as one of the team captains for the internationals for the Collins Cup. So we'll come to that later on. Now, some of my audience who are newer to the sport might not know your story, so I'm going to kick this off with my little anecdote. When I did my first Ironman back in 2003 down in Australia, I can vividly remember just grimacing my way through the back half of the marathon and coming up through the housing estate, and all of a sudden seeing the lead cyclist coming through with the lead lady, which was you coming through. And 2 things stuck out. The first one was you were absolutely flying. You must have been, I think you ran sub 3 hours that day, but you did it with a massive smile on your face.
Yeah, I always, you go through such an evolution when you're racing the sport, whether it be as an amateur or as a professional. But as I was racing as a professional, and it was my career, and there's sacrifices, of course. And I remember through the process, I reminded myself that this is my life's work. And if I'm not going to enjoy my life's work, I shouldn't be doing it. And so I just made it a priority that I would enjoy it. And the outward symbols that we present come into our heart as well. So, I mean, really, the smiles were how I felt. I really did love it, and I did celebrate it. But it made me feel good to have a smile on my face, and so it's kind of like even right now amidst this pandemic, the more we can smile, the more we might actually feel okay. It's super easy to have a sad face right now. There's a lot of difficulty, and that's not to be ignored. But as my grandfather, who is long passed away, born in the 1800s, used to say, well, when he was dressed up in his Sunday best, he'd say, well, there's no sense being poor and looking poor. And that he would dress up in his good clothing and go to church, and he looked like he was from the finest bred family, and yet was probably lower middle class, maybe lower class. I don't really know. So I just always, I really did love racing, and smiling allowed me to perform at a high level. I really believe that, and that when you're happy and you lead with your heart, your body can follow and do some pretty amazing things.
It always struck me. I remember the back in the day, Australia used to have a great sort of after party. Do you remember there would be
Yes.
you winners would go up and do your speeches, and then there'd be a huge meltdown. And actually, this is funny because I just had Chris McCormack on the show a few weeks ago, and he was talking fondly about the meltdown party. But I remember distinctly the two of you doing your speeches and the contrast between having watched Macca run past in the opposite direction, who didn't look like he was having any fun. And he said in his speech afterwards, he said, I was reminding myself the whole way through the last 10K how bad these things hurt. So I'm never going to have to enter another one of them, but I already want to do another one. And then you came up and did your speech, and it was almost the opposite attitude of, you genuinely had either, convinced yourself that you enjoyed it. I'm still not convinced anyone can actually enjoy the back half of an Ironman marathon like you seem to, but that totally came across in your body language of how much you were enjoying being out there, and just, I mean, it's hard to put into words how fast it looked like you were running, because, you know, you're quite a small, slight person. So it's a bit like watching Rinny run at the moment. You know, you look like you're going even faster than you actually are.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I could trick you all into thinking that I was running really fast. You know, I guess I had to make up for not being quite as talented maybe as Chris McCormick. So I had to call on every possible bit of energy in my body. And that included, you know, attitude and heart and all those things. But I mean, I firmly believe that there were a lot of athletes that I raced with that were a lot more talented. And so maybe the grimacing ones were racing on. I was racing on, you know, I didn't have that same talent. And so I had to call upon some other element. And, you know, I do firmly believe that your best performance comes from loving what you're doing and being happy and putting your whole heart into something. And for me, that outwardly looked like, you know, that outwardly was smiling. And yeah, I mean, I always, I still say, and I said back then, every day is a gift and we don't get that day back again. And so we have to maximize it the best that we can. And I never wanted to have any regrets. I mean, honestly, when I woke up race day morning, my pre-race protocol was to lay in bed with, you know, just before I got out of bed. And I literally said the words to myself, today is going to be a great day. I will successfully handle all the curveballs that will arise today. I feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally. I'm grateful for all that I have had, all that I will have, and all that I shall have. And today is going to be a great day. And that's how I started every race day. And that's not a lie. Those are memorized words out of my head. And if I couldn't say that, I knew I was in trouble. and it's interesting because when I was close to retiring from professional sport, which I retired in 2009 from professional competition. And I remember that year when I was racing in California, and it was the night before the race, and I wanted to go to a salad bar buffet. It was called Soup Plantation in California. We didn't have this in Canada. Now, the night before a half Ironman, having a salad bar is really not an ideal choice. But, you know, I was like, I want that salad bar. I want to have a salad bar and I want to eat all those foods. And this is what I really want to do. And I went and so already I wasn't speaking to performance by doing that. I was speaking to what I wanted to do. I figured I've deserved this. I've been racing for a long time. I can do what I want. And that morning of that race, I could not say those words that today was going to be a great day. Like I said them because that was habit, but I didn't mean them. And I actually didn't have a very good race. And I thought to myself, and it was then that I knew, if I'm not completely 100% happy where I'm racing and completely engrossed in what I'm doing and in love with that whole day, I can't elevate my game. And that's not good for my performance. And so that's, you know, I won't ever forget that. And I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen. That's why I went and raced Ironman Australia 5 times in a row. I loved it there. I loved the people. I loved the race. I loved everything about it. And I know that when I'm put myself in a position where I just am embracing every part of the challenge, then I'm able to elevate my game and have a great race.
Well, on paper, it's a pretty amazing looking career anyway. 33 Ironmans completed, 11 of them won. God only knows how many other 70.3s and things you won as well along the way. And we'll come to talking about Kona and your performances there a bit later on. But something I find, you know, especially amazing and that a lot of people might not know about you is that you were diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when were you 20? Is that right? You were very young.
Yes. Yeah. 20, which is actually old to be diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. But yeah, I was in university. So I felt pretty indestructible, even though I'd been diagnosed with this. But it was, you know, when you're 20 years old, no one can tell you anything. And so I was like, oh, well, that's okay. I'm still going to swim, bike, and run. And how great. I'll get on the right antibiotics the first time. I won't have to suffer as much. And you know, and off I went in my merry way. I'm still trying to do my best, and I'd get sick and go on antibiotics, and I just kind of persevered along with that. But I didn't want anyone to know that I had CF, because I didn't want to have an excuse, and I didn't want to become sort of I wanted to earn my accolades as an athlete. I didn't want it to be the pity party of, Lisa does pretty good, but wow, like she's got CF. I wanted it to be the other way around. And I wanted to prove myself as an athlete and then see what happened from there.
So tell us a bit more about cystic fibrosis then, and how it affects you specifically as an endurance athlete, because it's all I really know about it is it's a lung disease that involves you getting like thick amounts of mucus in your lungs and leads to horrible chest infections. So hardly ideal for an endurance athlete, is it?
No, it's that's true. Yes, it is a chronic genetic lung disease, and it causes an abnormal amount of mucus to accumulate in the lungs, and that causes constant lung infections and lung damage, and in the most severe cases will lead to so much lung damage that your lung function, the functioning of your lungs, drops so much that you need lung transplant. And that's more readily available now than it was 30 years ago. But ultimately, it does lead to an early death. But thankfully, the lifespan of someone with cystic fibrosis has grown considerably. In 1980, the lifespan was 12 years old. And
wow.
And now
in when? Sorry, 1980.
1980. So that's only 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It was 12 years old. So very, very sad. But now in Canada, it's close to 50 years old is the median life expectancy. And for me, as I've gotten older, I've had probably some more problems. While I was racing, I would get lung infections, and they were always bad. It was, I never got a common cold. If I got a common cold, that was end of story. I was going to be on some pretty severe antibiotics, and it would probably, the span of antibiotics would last anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the severity. And these antibiotics were, heavy doses, and, would really, knock the stuffing out of you. But when you're really fit, it knocks less stuffing out of you. So at that time I could handle it pretty well. But there was a lot of times where I was training and unwell. And the common theory of, well, rest and you'll get better really isn't the theory with cystic fibrosis, because exercise is so good to get the mucus out. So there was never once that my doctors told me to not exercise. They said, you'll be guided. Like, your exercise will be guided. Your coach might say, I want you to do a 2-hour run at 4-minute kilometers. You won't be able to do that. You can go out and do your best. Like, we're not worried that you're going to hurt yourself. Like, obviously 2 hours is a long time, but your body will adjust your pace because you just don't have the oxygen.
Yeah.
So, there was many times where I'd be very, very short of breath. Now, again, I always looked at that as, hey, I'm doing hypoxic training. Like, how fantastic. It's like I'm training at altitude. So I really honestly found the silver lining in exercise, even when I was unwell, because I looked at it as a time to, maybe my pace per kilometer wasn't going to be very good, or my watts on the bike were going to be lower, or my pace per 100 on the clock wasn't going to be as sharp. But the effort was there, and I just called it my altitude training. And so I just pressed on. I suppose the most serious side effect for me as a result of all the antibiotics I was on was that the particular one is a fluoroquil. Gosh, I'm going to say the word wrong because they've been talking.
We won't know.
It's not the one that everyone's been talking about with the pandemic. It sounds a lot like it. It's
I was just going to say, there you go. Well, if Trump can mispronounce those drugs every other press conference, then we're not going to hold that against you.
but it's not that one. Anyway, it's called ciprofloxacin, and it's part of a family of antibiotics that actually causes Achilles tendon rupture.
Oh.
And that was the drug I was on probably about 3 times a year, heavy dosage for minimum of 3 to 4 weeks per course. So I would be on it for at least 3 to 4 months a year. Wow. And so ultimately I did have Achilles surgery. So that was, probably a bad side effect of all that. But I did get to race, and I was able to stay relatively healthy. There was, a few Konas for sure that I was affected with chest infection, and just, really tried to elevate my game with a positive thinking, and, usually using my mental strength, and that bode me quite well, actually. In my final year of racing was the sickest that I ever got, and my lung function just kept dropping all year long. And I was actually at that stage doing inhaled therapies. I'd be waking up in the morning doing inhaled therapies with a nebulizer, and then going and trying to race, in the midday. And that year was very, very difficult. And my lung function just kept dropping. I couldn't fight this one particular infection. And they kept, changing my drugs to be on. And eventually I did have to be hospitalized and go on intravenous antibiotics. And that was, I was on intravenous for 5 weeks to try to get rid of the infection. So my lung function dropped to about 55% during that time. And it actually only got up to 70%. And that 70% sounds pretty good, but you have to remember 50% is one lung.
Yeah.
70% is not, a B student. 70% is still not great. And it took about 2 years for it to get back to the 80s, which again is still not where you want to be. But for me, it became a new baseline. So right now I'm probably in the 80s, somewhere in the 80s. I haven't, I usually would be going to the CF clinic at this, a few weeks ago, but we're not going to hospitals and doctors right now. So I don't know what it is, but I feel really good. And as long as I can keep exercising, exercise is really important to clear the mucus out of the lungs. And, that way I don't get as many lung infections, then, I'm in pretty good shape. And so, I'm definitely, exercise has been huge. And I really believe that, I've accepted that I have CF. And for me, it's a gift because it gives me purpose, and every single day. And there's a lot of really, really sick kids out there with CF. And I like to be able to offer them hope, and their families hope, that with good care and good nutrition and good energy and good mental thoughts and exercise, that they can really be the best they can be in spite of a disease. And that's all any of us can ever ask of ourselves.
It really sounds like the mental approach that you've got to this, that the positivity and the mental strength that you keep coming back to, it sounds like that must have played an absolutely massive, important, pivotal role in how you managed, firstly, just to get through the day to day, but secondly, in your racing, because I'm looking at your race results here. And, if we go through from 2002, you won Ironman Australia. Then in 2003, you won Australia and Canada. So that's like April and September. Australia and Canada again in 2004. Australia and Germany in 2005. So it's races that are sort of 4 or 6 months apart that you've managed to win, despite being on antibiotics for a month 3 times every year. Were there lots of races that you did where, you were genuinely sick and your lung function was genuinely much reduced, and you were kind of trying to mentally talk yourself through?
Oh yeah, there were. And the one that stands out the most was 2005 Ironman Hawaii. I was often sick for Hawaii Ironman. And I think it's because as good as exercise is for someone with CF, there's no question, moving the mucus out, the lungs stay healthy. We all know that too much exercise puts your immune system at risk. And so with Hawaii, when you're like, we were all just as super fit as we possibly could be in Hawaii. And when you're at that level where you're riding that line of like superhuman fitness, which is what the goal was as a professional athlete, when you're riding that line, you're just like knocking on the door of infection and illness. And that's why I think Hawaii became such a struggle for me with my lungs. So I would say probably out of the 11 times I raced the Hawaii Ironman, I was probably sick 4 times with like on antibiotics. So wow. This particular, I should have learned something by now.
Can I just interrupt you at this point? Sure. To tell the listeners, because again, I've got your results in front. So 4 of the 11 times you raced, you were sick on antibiotics, and your race results were from 2000 onwards, 6th, 5th, 4th, DNF in 2005, which we'll talk about because unbelievably this isn't related to cystic fibrosis, and then a 3rd in 2006. So, and you were genuinely really sick through 4 of those. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. 2004. I said it was 2005, but 2004 was my sickest racing Hawaii, and I was in the best shape I could possibly be in for that race. And at that time, and of course, that put me in the jeopardy of getting sick. And it was 5 days before the race. I woke up and I was like, couldn't breathe. And my lungs were just full of mucus. And I called my doctors at St. Mike's Hospital. And every time I travel with antibiotics. I'm always on inhalers. And so I have certain protocol that are just normal for me. Antibiotics are not or at that time were not normal for me every day. And so I called the doctors. They told me to go on ciprofloxacin, 1,500 milligrams a day, which is a huge amount. And so I went on that. And at that time, I traveled and I had a massage therapist. And so I was getting massage on my back every day to move the mucus out. I'd go to the ocean, salt water. Of course, salt is so good for getting, you gargle with salt water when you're unwell. And I would dive really deep into the ocean to create pressure. And then I'd come up out of the ocean and try to cough. And, if I could get rid of the mucus, then I'd be able to breathe better. And I just did this every single day. Wow. And to try to get ready for the race. And I got on the antibiotics. And what was interesting about that race is there was a woman named Tracy Richardson who had 2 children that were very, very sick with CF. And we had met about 2 years prior. And her kids were very, very sick. And she decided she was going to race Ironman New Zealand to raise money for kids with CF so that they would have access to sport. She saw the benefit of sport for kids with CF to clear that mucus, self-esteem, etc. So she did Ironman New Zealand that year. And she ended up raising money for CF, finished Ironman New Zealand, did fantastic. And then the Hawaii Ironman invited her to race in Hawaii. And they would highlight the Breath for CF campaign. And so they, created a bit of a story about Tracy that was racing Hawaii for her kids. And myself, someone with CF, racing and trying to win. And this happened to be the year that I get sick, like super sick. And so in the back of my head is, well, God created this drama. Like if you're really going to be saying that exercise is great for someone with CF and you can rise above CF, well, I'm going to make you sick on race day and let's see what you can do. Like this is in my head that this is what's happening. So I'm like, that's right. I'm going to be amazing. I'm going to be the best person on that start line with a chest infection with cystic fibrosis. And I sort of used the CF and I used the Breath for CF campaign, which Tracy was spearheading, really as my energy, because I certainly wasn't going to get it from my lungs. I was quite sick and on antibiotics, which are, really racing on antibiotics is pretty challenging. But I sort of changed my whole mental perspective and said, I'm so lucky that I get to race. Forget about poor me, that I have a chest infection and I'm not going to win the Ironman because I'm sick. My perspective is, how lucky am I that I have CF and I get to race? And I'm not going to flounder this opportunity to get to race the best women in the entire world. I am so lucky. And so I'm going to take all of myself, which is someone with CF and someone with a chest infection. I'm going to be the best person on that start line with CF and with a chest infection, and I'm going to have a great day. And so it was almost as if the race was secondary. It was just like that was what I was doing that day, and I'm just going to do my best. And I went into that race, and it was like such a hard day, as Hawaii always is. And I really remember just really being happy all day long because I got to race the Ironman World Championships. And how lucky was I? I wasn't waiting in the OR for a lung transplant. I was going to get better. This wasn't the end of the world. And I got to be here. And in that year, I truly believe that I elevated my talent and my lung health because of my attitude. And I ended up coming in fourth, which to me was probably my best performance because I really was super sick. I didn't cough once that entire day. And I was on antibiotics. I was still on ciprofloxacin.
Wow.
And I came in fourth. And it was almost like I was given this 9-hour window to just go. Like, okay, you're off of planet cystic fibrosis for 9 hours, but we're going to get you when you're done. And then for the next 2 weeks, I was really quite sick.
I bet.
But it was like I had this reprieve for a day. And that's, that's the power of the mind and the power of the heart when you want to do something. And I think anyone that might be listening that's ever had an opportunity, like if there's a burning building and you have children and they're inside it, you're superhuman. You could run into that building and you can grab your kids and you can save them. And there's no dress rehearsal for that. You just act and you do. When you want to do something, you will do it. If you had to run across a field and it's, a tornado, you could probably do that and survive. Like the human beings can do incredible things when they want to do it. And each of us, that looks different. For me, it was 2004 Hawaii Ironman World Championships when I probably on paper should never have raced. But I wanted it so badly. And I changed the perspective completely away from, I want to win this thing, to I'm just so happy and honored and privileged to be able to race. And I'm going to race for every person that can't. And perspective is everything.
Is this something that you have developed sort of on your own, or have you read books, or do you have a mentor that's helped you develop the kind of positive outlook that you've got? Because it sounds like you've managed to tap into something that if the rest of us can learn from this is going to massively improve our lives.
I know. Well, it's something you definitely have to practice. And I wouldn't say it's one thing in particular. I definitely had an amazing coach while I raced, Lance Watson, and he had his own mental strategies, which he taught me. So I definitely learned mental strategies from Lance. I also read books, The Power of Positive Thinking. And so I think I brought it all together. And then there were people that touched my life that, it just takes one thing for a person to say and it sticks in your mind. So, often I went to races like Ironman Australia by myself, and they were difficult journeys for me to go. You're going to an Ironman and it's a risky thing. You're risking your career, you're risking everything. And I'd go into these races by myself. So I would seek out comforts within the community. And in Australia in particular, in Foster, I met a wonderful priest there, and I'm Catholic. And so for me to go to church while I'm away, that sort of brings familiarity. And so that allowed me to meet people in the community. And I really think I just took a little something from everyone. And there was an amazing priest in Australia. His name was Father Tony. And he would say things to me like, I wish you peace. And so when I was so nervous before the race, I'd think about, Father Tony giving me peace and peace in my heart. And, I just always, so I feel like there wasn't any one thing in particular. It was a development. And I would write down my thoughts on paper, and, evolution of years and years and years. And I really always just wanted to be happy. And so I tried to find ways to make me happy. And I really believe there's a reason for everything. And so, when I woke up that Monday morning before Ironman Hawaii, 2004, and I wake up with a chest infection, yes, of course, there was a few hours of I feel sorry for myself. Don't get me wrong. But again, like I said, I gravitate towards happy. And I said to myself, okay, there's a reason for this, Lisa. Like, what's the reason? And I came up with that thought of, you're going to show the families with CF that there's hope, that in spite of being unwell, you can elevate yourself to a different level. And this isn't the end of the world. And so, I don't know where that really came from, but I have to think that it came from maturity and learning and travel and almost every Ironman that I traveled to by myself, as uncomfortable as that was. And let me tell you, there was a lot of tears on those 24-hour flights from Toronto to Australia or New Zealand, where I would be very sad to go by myself and question my career. But I often called them retreats, because I really did grow every single time I put myself into an uncomfortable situation. And again, that's why when seemingly bad things happen, I am of the belief that there's only goodness will ever come from adversity. Every bit of adversity we face, whether it be, that big flight where I'm sad the whole way, or waking up with a chest infection, or this current crisis, they're all bad things. But adversity leads to success. Out of tough times comes goodness. And we have to find it. And if you can find it, boy, it can be a beautiful rainbow at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. So when you look back over your career, what was your favorite race?
Well, I love them all, to be honest. I don't know what would be my favorite. Everyone was amazing. I always loved racing in Hawaii, because it was always so difficult, and I got to race the best people in the world. But Australia was pretty darn special with the people. I love the people. I love the community. I love the whole atmosphere. I would be hard pressed to find one, for sure. There's nothing like having a great race in your home country and in Canada. I loved racing in Canada as well, with all my friends, and opportunity to have my family there. But I think my development, my growth as a person and an athlete, probably most of it happened in Australia, to be honest.
Okay.
Just the big journey from home and really forcing myself to find joy. And in trying to find joy, I found people and I found humanity, which is amazing.
And what about, rather than the physical place of the race, when you look back over, what was the best battle that you had in a race with one of your competitors? Who were your favorite competitors?
Wow. Yeah, I loved racing Natasha Badman. She was a classy competitor, and she won Hawaii, obviously, several times, 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
And in 2006, which is my best finish of 3rd place, I remember passing her on the run, which was pretty surreal, to pass the Ironman world champion. And we were always, good friends in terms of like cheering for each other.
Yeah.
And I passed her on the marathon, and she said, Lisa, go win this. If I can't win it, I want you to win it. And I thought that was pretty amazing. But we were competitors, but there was no competitive grit in our teeth against each other ever. One of probably the most really competitive races was the World 70.3 Championships. It was the very first one in 2006. And I remember it just being so feisty. I had just done the Ironman World Championships in Kona 3 weeks prior. And now 3 weeks later was the Ironman 70.3 World Championships. So I had a lot of Ironman in my legs at this stage.
Yeah.
And this is the first Ironman 70.3 World Championships. And so we had a lot of short course women in the race. And it was scrappy. Like, I remember being in the swim and I had people clawing all over my back. I lost my watch. Like, literally someone's pulling my arm and my watch is coming off. And it was just treacherous. And then the ride was really aggressive. Everyone's going so fast and the transitions were fast. Like, we were all, everyone's getting into transition together. And again, I'm used to Hawaii where you're kind of you're not taking your time, but you're quite calculated in what you're doing. You're going to head off for 188K bike ride. And here it was just like, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, whoa, I got to get out of here, out of transition. And, then we get on the bike and everyone's really aggressive and you're being careful of the draft zone and there's so many people around. So I'm like riding out of my skin so that I can have clear roads because I've never had so many people so close before. And so I'm really, I don't want to get called for drafting. So I'm like riding my brains out to try to get clear road. Next thing you know, I'm in second place on the bike, which is, look at all my results. There's double digit deficits coming off the bike. And now I'm in second place coming off the bike. And I'm like, this is out of control. Like, holy God. But it was really born out of a fear of all these people. Like, I'm not used to all these people around me. And so now I'm coming off the bike in second and my husband can't believe it. He's like, my God, like you're a runner and you're coming off the bike in second. This is unbelievable. And I'm like freaking out thinking, oh my God. And then I get into transition and there's these people behind me now coming in and they're all so fast. No one's putting on socks. And I'm like trying to put on socks and put on my fuel belt. And I'm like, I don't have time for any of this. I've got to get going. Like, it was just so fast and furious and, just running as hard as I could. So that was probably the biggest battle. And Sam McGlone won that year and Marinda was there. And I think we had quite a battle on the run. And anyway, Sam McGlone ended up winning. I ended up coming in second. I think Marinda ended up coming in third.
That's right.
And, and so it was probably one of the neatest races because it was really, truly a race. It was awesome.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your upcoming role with the Collins Cup. You're selected as one of is the correct title team captain?
Yes.
And it's going to be your responsibility, isn't it, to pick a couple of team members from the sort of discretionary picks and also to help decide who races who. So tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Yes, I'm very excited about the Collins Cup. It's going to be a great display of head-to-head battle between the 6 best men and the 6 best women, international women, then the 6 best men and women from Europe, and the 6 best men and women from the USA. And so I'm a captain for the international team, along with Aaron Baker, Craig Alexander, and Simon Whitfield. And it's going to be amazing to do the lineups. I mean, obviously, we'll have Jan Frodeno from Europe, and from Canada, we could have Lionel Sanders going head-to-head with Jan Frodeno, which will be an amazing battle. And that's up to the captains to decide who goes head-to-head with who. And I want to see a lot of great head-to-head racing, and I think we have to present a really great race for spectators. So you can think, oh well, why don't you put maybe you're not your best person against Jan Frodeno, or maybe Europe won't want to put their best person against Lionel Sanders. Who knows? But because of the strategy, but I also think we owe it to the spectators and to the world to have some great head-to-head battles. So it's going to be really neat. We choose the top 4 international men, international women based on rankings. And then the next 2 we choose based on who we think would complement the team in the best way. So that's going to be pretty neat. And so I've had definitely some dialogue with some men and women internationals that want to be on the team. And so, my recommendation to them is let us know what you're doing. Let us know your fitness. Keep us in the loop with your results. And hopefully we'll have the best team. And but it's a great opportunity for the professional athletes to showcase their ability and to showcase triathlon and in that atmosphere of head-to-head battle.
It's a real shame, isn't it, that this, well, obviously it's globally, it's a shame that this whole COVID thing's happening and it goes much bigger than sport. But in the context of our conversation around triathlon, it was such a positive move for triathlon to have this announced. All the money, all the prestige, all the press that came around it. I was really excited to see the racing happen this summer, and then to have it either postponed or delayed to next year. It's a real shame for the sport, I think.
It's definitely a shame. And I mean, the great thing is that we will have it in 2021. It's there, the infrastructure's there, and the venue is there. We just have to all get healthy and get back to sport. And the wonderful thing is that the PTO is supporting the professional athletes. They have a bonus pool that they pay out to the top 100 men and women, and they usually do it at the end of the year. But this year they've done it already, knowing that the professional athletes won't be able to make money. So it's been, while this has been obviously difficult for sport and people's livelihood, the crisis, the pandemic, having the PTO pay out money to the top 100 men and professional women, it really highlights the force that is the PTO, which is incredible. Like, that wouldn't have happened if the crisis didn't happen. And so, like I said, when there's adversity, there can be goodness, and that goodness has come out. And so really, for the first time, when I raced, there was nothing like that going on. There was no cohesiveness. There was no family like that. And so for the first time, we have a very individual sport that has really been brought together. And so I think that supersedes everything. And it will all come to a great climax next year with the Collins Cup.
All right. Well, that seems like a really good place to leave it, Lisa. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great to manage to talk to you and interview you, because, like I said, it's kind of brought my triathlon story full circle to be able to talk to you. And you've always been such an amazing, positive character in the sport. So it's great to catch up with someone who I consider to be one of the true legends of Ironman racing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak with you as well.
Well, I hope we can catch up again in the future. Maybe it'll be next year at the Collins Cup. Who knows, eh?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Love that interview. You can find out more about Lisa over at her website, and her website's also got details of her book, which is called An Unlikely Champion. And I really got a lot out of that. I left the interview really inspired by the fact that she's got this incredible positive attitude, and she genuinely believes she managed to beat athletes more talented than her through her positive attitude. And when you consider the incredible health challenges that she's had, I don't know about you lot, but when I've had a chest infection, I've not felt like racing, let alone racing and finishing fourth in Kona when you've had a chest infection for the past 7 days. It's unbelievable what a positive mindset can do to a person. And it's really given me a kick up the pants the last few days since I did the interview to really start practicing some of this stuff for myself. And I've got to say, it's working as well. Not being cheesy, but it's working. I talked earlier about thinking about myself as being a more athletic person and less about being an ill person. And that's really, really helped my day-to-day living. So give it a try. It's all good stuff. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thanks very much again to our sponsors, precisionhydration.com. You can get 15% off using the code OxygenAddict15. And also Thriver.co, use the code OxygenAddict10 for 10% off all subscriptions. You can get 20 free travel packs worth £60 with your first order at athleticgreens.com/oxygenaddict. And remember, if you want a bit of structure back in your triathlon life, you can go to teamoxygenaddict.com and you can get your first month of coaching with me and with us in the team for just £1. Remember, there's a link in the show notes for all of these sponsors so you don't have to remember them. All right, guys, until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. I hope you're feeling well. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. See ya.